So we're here in Brasilia, the capital city of Brazil, to support our friends with the United Nations Environment Programme's Climate and Clean Air Coalition on a conference they're holding called Accelerating Action on Super Pollutants, the Road to COP30. And of course, COP30 is the next UN climate conference taking place in Belem in Brazil later in the year. There are scientists here, there are government officials, also from the government of Brazil, which is fantastic. There are NGOs and there are experts who are trying to look at how we can accelerate this action. So let's go and let's meet these amazing people taking action. So we've got some wonderful guests again with us here in Brasilia at the United Nations Environment Programme's Climate and Clean Air Coalition, where we're talking about super pollutants. Could you say who you are and where you're from?
So my name's Donovan Story, and I'm the Waste and Climate Expert at the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, hosting this conference.
And you sound like you might be from New Zealand.
I'm originally from New Zealand, yeah.
Okay, you have to say that because if you said Australian, you'd come and wrestle me to the ground and, you know. Anyway, and please, who you are and where you're from.
I'm Camila Labarca. I work in the Ministry of the Environment in Chile.
And Michael Bankole from Lagos State, Nigeria. I work with the Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we're going to talk about waste. There's been a lot of talk about waste here at this conference, and we know that it's probably going to be quite a focus of the Brazilian government when they host the next UN climate conference, COP30, in Belem in Brazil. And just for the viewers, so they can understand, we're talking about waste, we're talking about landfills where stuff goes from the municipality, etc. And the emissions of super pollutants are coming, in a sense, from the rotting of organic waste and then creating methane, which goes into the atmosphere and causes climate change. We were just talking earlier, because I think people like to know what proportion, I mean, how much of the methane that's going up in the atmosphere is coming from rotting carrots and tomatoes and all kinds of organic waste that's ending up in landfills worldwide?
Well, it's estimated to be around 20% of anthropogenic or human-made methane emissions comes from waste. It's also the fastest growing source as waste increases dramatically over the next several decades. We can fairly much anticipate, given that organic waste is around half the composition of waste globally, that those emissions will dramatically increase unless we do something. And food loss and waste, as you were pointing out, is a really important part of the equation. Around a third of the food that's produced in the world is dumped or never makes it to households, onto tables. And that's a crisis, a food crisis and a nutrition and health crisis as well. So these are some of the key statistics that we really need to shift into more positive territory.
You're from Chile, you're with the Ministry of the Environment. You're from Nigeria with the Ministry of the Environment. I mean, are these kinds of similar points that are being made coming out in your own national countries? Do you see waste happening even in Nigeria and Chile?
Yes. So in Chile, the main source of methane emissions is the waste sector. It's about 40%, and also is increasing rapidly. Yeah.
The same thing resonates with us in Nigeria, because we see a lot of organic waste coming from food markets, even from the farmers, transportation of food from the hinterland to the main city. And before most of these products get into Lagos, for instance, half of the truckload is already spoiled. And the only usefulness for these spoiled food materials is to go straight to the dump site.
Right. And is that a problem of the supply chain? Is it a problem of refrigeration? How does it gets lost coming from the farms? Are the farms a long way from Lagos? And
it is a bit of both, because Lagos as it is not a fully agrarian state. We kind of depend so much for our food products from other states in Nigeria, and it's a long way. Sometimes they have to travel 3-4 days, and they use the old conventional truck of bringing these fruits into Lagos. And before they get to Lagos, they are spoiled. Even at the markets, we found out that when the product are not taken from the marketers quickly, and there's no way for them to refrigerate or to keep this product, over time, fruit like pineapples, watermelon, they get rotten within few days, and they end up at the landfill. And the resultant effect is this production of continuous methane, and we need to do something about it, and we're trying to do something about that so that we can reduce the amount of food waste going to the dump site.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the solutions here, but I just want to clear up one thing. Is it the organic waste that's causing the methane emissions from these landfills, these dump sites, but mainly landfills? Is it food, or are there other components of this organic waste stream? Who'd like to?
Yeah, so you have to get gardening residues, and also paper and cardboard.
For us in Lagos, what we have is a commingling of all our waste. And from statistics, we have about 70% of our waste organic, and everything ends in a landfill. So definitely when you have 70% of your total waste being organic, definitely you're going to have production of methane.
So let's get to solutions then. So it would seem that the best thing would be to make sure that the organic waste never gets to the landfill. That is the first thing. How can we deal with this? And are you dealing with it, or are there good examples around the world of others dealing with it? What's the answer to this?
Well, I think Chile's got some great examples, and also Lagos as well. But from a more general perspective, I think eliminating or dramatically decreasing food loss and waste is a great priority for a number of reasons, not just obviously methane emissions and climate change, but also from a health and nutrition perspective as well. It doesn't make sense to be growing food which is never consumed or never reaches people that need it.
Yes, it's a definition of madness, isn't it, really?
It is a crazy system, and as you were saying, part of it is logistics, part of it is the lack of refrigeration, it's transport issues, it's quality control, which thankfully a number of countries are now addressing and saying that no, we just don't throw out fruit and vegetables because it's not perfect. And so part of it's regulation. And I think that there are also a very strong focus from a number of countries on source segregation. Source segregation is critical. If you mix up, as Michael's saying, if you mix waste, all of it becomes unusable from a recycling perspective. But if you can separate your waste streams, then you can derive value from each. And you can create businesses, and you can avoid some of the negative impacts of mixed waste. But
what's happening in Chile?
Yeah, so as people move to the cities, they get the bad behavior of dumping all of their waste in a big black packet, and then you just get rid of it. But it's a bad behavior because when people lived in the land, they didn't they segregated, right? So first you have to prevent, right? To prevent and try to not waste food. And then you have to try not to get that organic waste to the landfill. So you can do other things like composting, and then you also get compost. And you can do this in different scales. So you can have like a little compost on your home, and then you don't need to transport for that waste as well. Or you can have like a communal with many houses come together and work as a community, and then you can have gardening with the compost you get, or you can have industrial ones. That is most economic effective, and they work better, but all of the solutions are useful.
And is that a similar reflection in Lagos, what you can do?
Interestingly, this morning we were talking about waste, and then one of the things that came out yesterday, I was in a session yesterday when we were talking about waste, and one of the speakers talked about waste is a social externalities. And I reflected on that. And one of the things that came from that is that we need to put value on waste. Waste is not actually waste. Waste is a resource. And when we put value on waste, and then again, look at where the source of this waste coming from the homes. and the women has something to do, because when a mother portion a meal for you and ensure that you finish the food, that is, you don't cook more than you require, you don't take more than you require, so you eliminate, creating waste in that respect. But for us in Lagos, we are looking at two options. One of the options is to convert the organic waste into compost using different technologies, soldier fly technology, normal composting, and we have a site that is ready to take this waste. We've done our characterization. We know what we need to do to get the organic waste to that site. The other one is we are having a project now. It's a proof of concept. There is a designated fruit market in Lagos that we know that they generate lot and lot of organic waste from their fruit. And what we are doing now is building a biodigester inside the market. So we kind of use the feedstock from the market as the feedstock for the biodigester, produce energy that we use to power the market and also to power the cooling system. So the marketers at the end of the day can bring their products to the facility and store it in the cooler. The second day they can come back and get their fresh vegetables and fresh products. So by so doing, we are eliminating. And the waste that we are getting, we are also putting it back into the system to generate energy for the market.
Michael raised a really important point here, in that session we talked about needing to change our relationship with waste. We can no longer afford a system which is you just throw it away or put it in a bag and it just disappears off to a landfill and problem over, right? Because now we've seen in the last decade or so through satellite technology and what have you, there is a clear climate repercussion for that behavior which is affecting the planet. And so we do need to really change our relationship with waste. We need to see waste as a resource which has been badly utilized and badly dealt with.
But people are a bit, people are quite busy. People, I don't want to say people are, lazy and they don't do the right thing and they should be before the judge every morning for getting rid of their waste badly, you know what I mean? We have to deal with the human condition, right? And how we do that is complex. But, I mean, clearly this problem is growing. Some people might not intellectually connect with, the climate impact of their actions. Are there ways of empowering people in other ways to be what you might say good citizens, to ensure that they use their food wisely, as you said, don't cook more than you need, or that you dispose of your organic material wisely? Clearly, there need to be systems in place for them to do it in a relatively easy way, so it's not too complex. Can we change the hearts and minds of people? Because they seem to be at the center of this.
I think it's possible. What we need to do is to do an aggressive education and awareness program. And I believe in pilot systems. When you do a pilot with a small group of people and you see the way they take what you are bringing to them, it is easy to replicate. And everybody wants a clean society. I'll take, for instance, my own circumstances, where I come from. You hear a lot about, we're not doing well in waste management, we're not doing this. They compare Lagos to London, they compare Lagos to Paris, to these developed countries. But the mere fact or the basic thing is that the people in those areas you are comparing us to are responsible for their waste. So when we bring everybody to be responsible and do your due diligence, you do what you need to do, because there's an intersection between yourself and your environment. And what you do affects your environment, and what the environment do affect you also. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to put it there for everybody to know. And also we need to put value on waste management. I've always said it, that waste management is not a social service. When people see that, okay, it's the responsibility of government to take care of waste, then they seldom do the right thing. But when you make everybody responsible for the waste they created, then they think more of what their action is going to be and the repercussion to them economically.
I suppose that's the question, Michael. How do you make them responsible? I mean, I know in Canada, for example, that all waste is kind of weighed, and if the weight of your waste is too high, you get a bill. Right? Okay. And so everyone has an interest in, I always think that probably means people have an interest in secretly getting rid of their waste without telling anybody, but that's another story.
Well, another thing we're doing in Chile is linking the closing of dump sites with having systems with low methane. So this is like a regional program. So we are working, because in Latin America, most of the cities have this problem of dump sites that are not regulated landfills that have like health authorization, but they just dump anywhere. And that people that live there don't want to see that. So they can engage better on having a solution for that problem, and you link that with the methane. So you don't just dump there. You have a composting plant that is closer to your home, and that gets you educated and make more conscious of your waste.
So. Clearly, there are things happening. It's not like this problem is at ground zero and we have to start from the beginning. I mean, but it clearly is a massive problem, given the numbers. How do we scale it up? And that's, I suppose, the last real question I have for you, which is, how do we take this to the full potential? Because it seems that it's a low-tech solution in general, so it doesn't require some fancy new technology. It seems to require public awareness. It seems to require easy methods of getting rid of organic waste that don't take it to the landfill. So composting near your house where it's possible, and this sort of thing. There are obviously mechanisms there. What can a COP do for this? I mean, can Belem be a moment where the world suddenly ignites action to take this to the highest level possible? It's hard to actually imagine that's possible, but can there be signals that come from a climate conference that empower governments and municipalities to go further? Is money an issue in all this somewhere, to actually make things happen? Well, how do we take this so that we don't hear about the 20% anymore and that it's growing, that we go, that job's done?
Well, I think that for the waste sector, regulation is really important. And if we want to have action that reduces methane fast, we have to look at the landfills. So the diversion of organic before landfill is the long-term goal. But in the short term, we have to capture the methane that is already being emitted on the landfills. And then we have to have regulations. So we're working on having a standard for landfills, so they don't
tell me something.
To emit this methane.
But why in developing countries has it been that capturing methane from landfills hasn't become almost the norm? Is it cost? Or is it, again, just awareness by the governments or the municipalities that was an option?
There was not the big incentive. So we had regulation, but only on security. So it's very small, the amount of methane you have to capture.
So it had to be a safe landfill that wasn't leaking bad things into the water system, but the methane
doesn't matter.
Okay.
And another thing here, I quite align with what she said, but another thing here we must know is that the problem of developing world is not the same thing as the problem that developed world are facing. Capturing methane is not one of the top priorities for government.
Got you.
In Africa, for instance. Africa wants to see hospitals, they want to see good roads, they want to see this. Now you're talking about climate change, talking about methane capturing. They ask you the question, does it put food on the table? So I think finance is part of it. And while I was coming to the hall in the afternoon, I was speaking with a lady from Argentina. And I said the donor agencies, the UNEP of this world, the World Bank of this world, must treat developing countries differently from the way they treat developed countries. We don't need the same thing. We are tired of, creating or producing papers, papers upon papers, policy documents. We want actions on the ground, a pilot project that will make African leaders, that will make our decision makers to see that this thing is possible. Because you tell a leader in Africa today, will you rather put money in methane capture or put money in health or in education? Methane capture will be the last.
Yeah.
So when we do a proof of concept that this thing is possible, then they see the importance, then they can replicate. And then COP30, I'm expecting that COP30 will be able to, put a stronger regulation that will make all world leaders to put these subjects in our development plans. Because if it is not part of us, if you don't put it in your plans, then 2030, 2050 is going to be a mirage. We'll come back in 2035 and we'll still talk about this growing methane.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I think everybody needs to speak with one voice. The scientists, the decision makers, the climate activists, we must agree that the trajectory at which we are going is not good for the planet. And we must do something about it. We must increase regulation. We must put in finance. We must do pilot projects. We must put it in our developmental plans so that we know that this is the way we need to go and to cut down. And then in Africa, for instance, we don't believe in food banks, but we need to put it in the psyche of people.
Yes.
That food banks does not mean that the food is spoiled. It means that we have excess that nobody is taking. So take it off me so that you can have your meal.
Yeah. Good. We could talk for a long time about this topic. I think the good news is that the awareness clearly is much higher than it was even a few years ago, I think in all countries. And there clearly is a straightforward solution to the existing landfills. And the finance probably isn't massive, but it needs to be sourced. And whether it's sourced domestically or whether there's 50-50 from overseas development aid or wherever it's coming from, it needs to happen now. And we need to also make our public and our consumers aware that this is a good thing. And you can put food on the table, can't you, by harvesting the methane gas, turning it into electricity. Somebody makes a bit of money and maybe the local community keep the lights on. So there's all kinds of funky ways of looking at this. Best of luck with all your work. It's absolutely vital stuff you're doing. And thank you very much for being on We Don't Have Time TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So another wonderful guest here at the Marketplace of Ideas here in Brasilia. Could you say who you are and where you are from?
Bom dia, my name is Bernardo. I'm Brazilian from Rio de Janeiro, and I'm an environmental engineer, and I'm working with organic waste management at Rio de Janeiro.
Super. Now, my understanding is that you're trying to create almost a circular economy in Rio where the organic waste is not wasted and at the same time is not thrown away into rubbish tips or landfills, producing methane, which is a super pollutant. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Exactly. We have working to construct a very integrated economy circular system. Then we seek for our goals are recover the values from the organic waste, mainly the compost and the biogas, and after valorize these byproducts, we use the compost in the urban agriculture, the biogas to produce electricity to enhance, to guarantee the self-sufficiency of the system. And as well, we integrate with the supermarket chain, Zona Sul, to create another model, the food bank, to recover, to avoid the landfill of this organic waste and give the poor people, the people with food insecurity, the right food to have a healthier life.
Great, perfect. So it's a circular system. You're working with the supermarkets. You're making sure that none of the food is thrown away by the supermarkets when it's good quality. Any food that maybe isn't good quality, that goes to the process of generating biogas, for example. You generate electricity to make the project self-sufficient. And you can also charge vehicles, autos or trucks or vans. So you're connecting every single bit of a circular system. Right now, how much of Rio's waste are you, organic waste, are you processing?
Per year, we process about 4,000 tons of organic waste. Is compare with Brazil is we can attempt like 80% of the municipalities in Brazil, but Rio de Janeiro is a huge city with more than 6 million people. Then for Rio de Janeiro is a very small project, it's a pilot, and we still landfilling about 99% of the organic waste. And with the right investments and the right projects, we can enhance our capacity and scale up this model of circular economy and increase the treatment above 20% of organic waste and achieve our goals, municipal goals, to reduce the GHG emissions lower than 30% until 2040.
So you can make a big contribution to Rio de Janeiro's targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with this 2040 target. Yeah, it appears to me that this is very creative. The question would be, why has it never been done before? Why is it so hard?
Yeah, good question. Because it's a very transversal process. Then we have to connect to very different stakeholders. Then we have to talk with the supermarkets, the schools, the urban agricultures, the poor communities, and it's hard to connect everybody. Then there's a very slow working to talk and convince and increase the awareness of the people about the importance of reduce the organic waste wastage. And Rio de Janeiro never have this process before. Then all new projects is a challenge to create from the zero the new culture of the population. Then we have to show the real results of this process, and we are showing that. Then produce the compost for urban agriculture and the electricity for recharge the electric cars and maintain the self-sufficiency of the plant.
So, in a sense, the city people that make decisions, they can actually come to your project because it exists, right? They can see it working, and then they can actually imagine, wow, if we actually made it bigger and more interconnected and the whole of Rio was in this system, this would be a big deal for health, food security, electrification of transportation, and also for cutting our emissions, methane, going to the atmosphere and causing big problems. So, yeah, and who needs to make this next decision? Who decides on the funding?
Very good question as well. The city hall have to make the decisions, the public stakeholders, but we still need the founding of companies and international initiatives like CCAC and UNEP and so on to accelerate this process. Because inside the public power, we have a time, a public time to do the licitations, the bureaucracy, and so on. And we have funding. We can accelerate this process, and increase our capacity in very short time.
So you would be very happy at COP30 in Belem if the city of Rio, international community, others come together and say, we are going to give this gentleman here, I don't know how many millions of dollars you need to actually turn this citywide and solve a huge problem.
Yes, because our challenge is connect people, connect companies, and connect initiatives. Then we have this model already, and then we just need the money to accelerate the implementation of the units and the biodigestion, the composting sites in Rio de Janeiro.
Good. Thank you very much indeed for talking to We Don't Have Time TV. Very interesting. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Obrigado e bem-vindos ao Brasil.
So we have another wonderful guest. If you could say who you are and where you are from.
My name is Shohei Takeuchi. I'm from Japan. I'm from Ajinomoto. That is one of the largest food and amino acid company.
So tell us a little bit, because you have a solution that you have developed, which will help maybe cows and livestock not burp so much methane into the atmosphere, which is obviously bad for climate change. What is your answer to this challenge?
We are providing the amino acid and to reduce the greenhouse gas emission from dairy and beef cattle. And our approach is optimization of the nutrition, especially amino acid in the feed. And our product, AgiPro-L, that is a natural derived lumen protect lysine, can make the best balance of the amino acid in the feed. And this best balance of the amino acid in the feed can decrease nitrous oxide from manure and also methane from the burp. And also our solution can reduce consumption of the natural protein, such as soybean, resulting in reduction of the carbon dioxide from feed cultivation. So our solution can reduce, of course, methane from the burp, but also the other greenhouse gas emission from dairy and beef cattle.
So I understand that a lot of cows are fed very high protein diets, but they are missing these amino acids. Do you think in thousands of years ago, in the past, that natural cattle in those days had a more balanced diet, but we've changed that balance with modern agriculture?
Yes. So dairy and beef cattle, the productivity is increasing to supply the enough protein source for the human being. That's why the feed design diet is changing and protein content is increasing. But now we have to optimize this protein content with using the amino acid technology that contribute to reduce, keep this high productivity with less emission of the greenhouse gas emission.
So you're from Japan. You have very famous beef from Japan. Do you think soon that Japanese cows could be leading the way with less burping?
Yes, we have already started the initiative with Japanese beef company, also Japanese prefecture that raised in a lot of the beef cattle. And we are trying to, make the premium beef with less GHG emission. And so I believe that Japan will lead such kind of the initiative. And also we are providing our solution, not only Japan, but also the other region, such as US, EU, and Brazil. And so also our initiative will lead to enhance reduction of the greenhouse gas emission.
You're here because you think that if there was some extra financial support, that this could go faster and further, yeah? So what is needed for your solution to go beyond a nice idea with some some farmers using it to scaled up idea.
Yes. Actually, our solution also can reduce the feed cost of the farmer. So the farmer can get the financial benefit with using our solution. But despite our product's benefit, promising benefit, there remains typical resistance to change the feed practice. So currently we are looking for the support of the government and also financial institution to make the, more incentive to the farmer to ease and encourage of the transition.
So what you're looking for is support for maybe pilot trials in different countries, so the farmers are not worried. It's a trial, and if it works, then the farmers might go, okay, and the government will say, this is approved, and we can go ahead.
Yes, pilot itself, actually, we have already studied a lot of the pilot in the various countries, but for the commercialization or for expansion, some farmer have the resistance to implement our solution continuously. So in that case, of course, government approval or financial institution support from the viewpoint of the economical support will lead to expand our solution for the continuous usage in the farmer.
Well, thank you very much indeed for being with We Don't Have Time TV, and best of luck with your solution.
Sorry?
Best of luck with your endeavors.
Thank you very much. We are making a best effort to expand our solution to contribute the future of the society. Thank you very much.
So we've got some more wonderful guests here who are taking part in the United Nations Environment Programme's Climate and Clean Air Coalition annual conference here in the Brazilian capital city of Brasilia. So please introduce yourself. Who are you and where are you from?
My name's Kaveh Zahidi. I'm the director of the Office of Climate, Biodiversity and Environment at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN.
Okay, thank you. Over to you.
And my name is Sue McCluskey, and I am the Special Representative for Australian Agriculture.
Super.
My name is Bernard Kimoro. I'm the Head of Climate Change and Livestock Sustainability in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development from Kenya.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we're going to talk about agriculture. We're going to talk about agriculture, not just in terms of super pollutants, but we're also going to talk in terms of, can it be a good thing for farmers to actually act on environmental issues? Because we were talking upstairs, and I think other people have been saying the same thing, that if you say to a farmer that, you know, well, we really need you to cut your methane emissions or anyway, your climate emissions, and they're going to say, well, hold on a second, what's in that for me? I'm trying to run a livelihood here. I'm trying to feed my family, or I'm trying to feed a market. You know, why should I be interested? And so elaborate a little bit on that. How do we talk to farmers about this? Why should they be interested?
Well, I mean, farmers are interested, firstly, because who is being impacted by climate change? It's the farmers. They're being impacted. They know what's happening. Climate change is impacting their livelihoods, their lives, and of course, the production of food. So that's the first reason why they would care, because SLCPs and dealing with these super pollutants can help us hopefully reduce the trajectory of global warming. But beyond that, they care because these pollutants are impacting agriculture. They're lowering the yields. The production is becoming more difficult. Things like black carbon and tropospheric ozone are reducing the yields that are being produced. And of course, they're having health impacts. They're having health impacts, including for agricultural communities. And we're seeing some new science on not just the health impacts, but how they're exacerbating some of the heat impacts. We're seeing extreme heat is becoming a big issue for agriculture and agricultural production. And this is being worsened, if you will, by the super pollutants.
Yeah, no, in fact, this was what some of the scientists we had on earlier were saying exactly, that, you know, we know it's getting hot out there because of rising temperatures propelled by rising carbon dioxide levels, but that it's also getting even hotter in some places because of the super pollutants and the tropospheric ozone and blah, 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 blah. So absolutely, I mean, the health risk to workers out there. You're a beef farmer, I think, in Australia, but you're also a special representative Is it for the government, or who are you a special representative for in Australia?
So I'm actually a ministerial appointment.
Aha.
So appointed by the government, but I'm an industry voice. So I very much bring the farmer perspective in my global engagement.
Are farmers seeing any benefits in Australia from moving from maybe their traditional ways of livestock farming to what some people might call sustainable farming systems? Is there a movement in your country towards a different way of doing things that are good for the farmers and good for the cows as well, which is also equally important? We want happy cows, but also has the additional benefit of being good for the global climate?
Look, in Australia, farmers have been adapting for decades. So I can go back many, many years, and farmers have been embracing more sustainable ways of farming. No and low-till farming, for example, which is much more sustainable for the soil. We know that if we don't look after our soil, and you talked about health, soil health is critically important, and we see the difference that it can make to our soil health if we don't look after it. And if you have good soil health, you'll grow good grass, which will grow fat cows, which will make you more money. So it actually makes good sense from a profitability perspective that we can actually farm sustainably. And so our practices have changed in response to the changing environment, but we've really been driven by how those practices actually make us better farmers to make us more money.
Can dairy and beef cattle farming survive in a superheated Australia?
Look, I think with the science that is being undertaken around genetics in particular, I think the way that technology is evolving, there may be some areas where the farming may need to change, or where you may actually need to employ more diverse practices. But, you know, on my farm, yes, the summers are getting hotter, we're seeing more droughts, we're seeing more fires, but we're also seeing more flooding in other parts of the country. And the same happens around the world. So when we look at a changing climate, it's for farmers, we understand risk. And so this is a risk that we've got to think about how we can actually mitigate.
It's interesting, this whole idea of adaptation and resilience, and what you were just saying there. I also chair a film awards out of London, and it's on sustainability. And for the first time, I heard a man who produces his company produces the lion's share of cauliflowers in the UK, in a place called Cornwall on the west. And he was saying that they are having to adapt not just to floods in a growing season, but then a drought in the same growing season, that is coming round again and again and again, and it represents two very fascinating challenges. You're in Kenya. I've lived in Kenya. Kavi's lived in Kenya. We love Kenya. How are you dealing with this challenge in terms of agriculture and climate change?
My name is Bernard Kimoro. I'm from Kenya.
Hello, Bernard.
As you've said, one of the most interesting thing about agriculture is that it has both adaptation and mitigation. It makes it complex, but it also brings in a lot of opportunities. So in Kenya, if I say this, we lost 2.5 million animals in a span of 2 years due to droughts. And after the droughts, yes, failed seasons, we also had floods.
Yeah.
So it's a paradox. It's a very complex situation. But the most important thing we're also seeing is that farmers have had to adjust very quickly into these situations. For some of the pastoral areas, this is a normal phenomenon where the droughts come, except that now they are more frequent. So they have had to really adjust very quickly. We see a lot of diversification in terms of the animal species, from the grazers, for example, to the browsers. That is an adaptation that you're already seeing. So once you start seeing the change in the species, is an adaptation. In some of the areas, it's interesting also as we talk about the heat rises, becoming also a beneficial to the agriculture sector. As long as there is some sort of precipitation or some water, that enhances the growth of some of the plants. So it's about seizing the opportunities which are there, not really saying that the issues around climate change are totally very bad, but what are the opportunities we are seeing? Because agriculture is complex, it's both adaptation and mitigation. So and whatever action we do, whether it is in adaptation, has a co-benefit in mitigation, and vice versa. So those adjustments are what I think we are looking at in Kenya.
So one thing that we've seen here, and I'm sure you guys have seen even more of this in your work, is that there are a lot of solutions coming along. I mean, one thing about climate change is it has triggered a lot of creativity in the world, whether it be in renewable energy or it be in wind-powered ships, or all kinds of things are happening around the world because climate change needs to be resolved. And I know we weren't going to say, like, we mustn't say to the farmers, you must do this for climate change, but of course, the farmers would like some help to actually switch to different systems, right? And we seem to have talked a little bit about livestock here. I mean, okay, we keep reading about seaweed as part of a diet, or synthetic algae. There's people in this marketplace of ideas upstairs with natural forage that actually has those substances in that reduce the burping of cows, for example. And the fascinating thing I heard upstairs, which I don't know, maybe you all know this, but I didn't realize it, that you could have a cow of a certain breed, of course, say, let's call Daisy, and Daisy's got a friend called Robin, exactly the same breed, but Maisie burps like 25% less methane than Robin, the identical cow. Or to look at the cow, it would be the same cow. It's the same breed. But they have slightly different genetics inside. And therefore, you could select Robin, if Robin's the low burper, versus Daisy, or the other way around, right? And kind of move that line of that breed with those genes in down the chain into the future, and you've got an instant benefit in terms of methane, right? So, I mean, there's a lot going on. But I would think in Africa and in many other parts of the world, even in Europe, farmers are going to say, well, okay, if you want me to start changing things like this, diets and maybe some different breeding, whatever, who's going to pay the bill for this? Do I just have to suck it up and just do it? Or, you know, so how do we deal with that catalytic finance, I suppose? The sweetening of the change?
Nick, I mean, maybe I'll have a go. I think the first thing we've got to do is change a little bit the narrative. The narrative about, you know, the farmer is doing bad, or to the one you said. Actually, we have a wealth of solutions that we can provide. And these are solutions that you can only find in agriculture and food systems. And they're solutions that can deliver for climate, adaptation and mitigation, probably at the same time for biodiversity, and of course for food security. Don't forget that piece.
Yeah.
It's not all high tech, right? Agroforestry can be one, but of course sustainable livestock can be another. And again, even when you look at livestock, and you know better than I do, just improving animal health goes a long way to reducing those emissions. So I think we've got quite a lot of solutions that help us with this sort of the multiple agendas that countries are facing. The bottom line, of course, is that you have to make them investable. But as long as you sort of make agriculture seem to be a bit of the bad boy of the conversation, you're not going to be able to direct the investments there. What we've been doing at the Food and Agriculture Organization is actually using the financing of the vertical funds, getting the environment and climate finance to help countries trigger some of this agri-food system transformation, whether it's sustainable livestock or sustainable fisheries, aquaculture, restoration of degraded agricultural land. All of this can help across the agenda. But that trigger financing is important, because environment and climate finance can often trigger then a different conversation at the country level itself in terms of repurposing their own national investments.
And I think from a farmer perspective, there's got to be a value proposition. You know, what's going to move us to be able to take up some of these solutions? Is it going to make me more money? Is it going to increase my yields? Am I going to get more kilograms of beef that I can sell for money? And farmers learn from other farmers. So it's really important that these solutions that are science and evidence-based can be translated into what this means on the ground, and how you actually can have this sort of education and communication that is in the language of the farmers, that actually demonstrates the value proposition, but also demonstrates why it's worth it. And in the end, and I always get quite concerned about the compliance burden that we're putting, particularly on small and medium farmers around the world, from climate change and reporting, in the end, there will need to be some sort of incentive put in place, and whether that be through grants, whether that be through your tax system. We have a lot of countries that provide subsidies to farmers. Can we repurpose subsidies so they are actually focused on better climate outcomes, so the farmer gets paid for changing their practices?
What, maybe wrapping up here because we're running out of time, but I mean, there are all kinds of private sector out there, right? There are a private sector that doesn't want change and just wants to keep the old business model. There are other members of the private sector out there that actually want change because they've invested in that change, and they've made commitments to change, science-based targets, for example. They have to decarbonize their supply chains. And I was always entranced by the example of Unilever, when they were faced with having to cut the emissions of farmers that supply them with, in this case, soya beans to make Hellmann's mayonnaise. And, they sell a lot of Hellmann's mayonnaise, so they have a lot of soya beans that they need. And they asked the farmers that supplied these soya beans, can you move to a more regenerative form of agriculture? And these farmers went, absolutely not, because we're not just going to do that. It's a risk. We don't farm that way. And so Unilever paid for 4 years for them to actually convert to regenerative agriculture. And then the farmers found they were using less fertilizer, less pesticides. The soil was healthier with the wiggly worms and all the little beetles that fertilize the soil. They had more water retention and so on and so forth. And now those farmers just carry on without any support from Unilever, producing soya beans for Unilever and Hellmann's mayonnaise. But somebody intervened to de-risk that nervy moment of a transition. And so you've got your vertical funds and blah, 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 and that's great. We need those, right? They're catalytic too. But we do need those like-minded bits of the private sector involved in agriculture. I mean, Unilever is a big player in Kenya, right? I mean, you produce a lot of food and other plant-based crops. I'm thinking of flowers, but maybe we're not talking about flowers today. But there is a role for others, isn't there? It's not just the governments. It's not just... we need, say, the food companies to want this as well, and maybe to pay a bit of money to get the change that they need to meet their targets.
For sure. There is this upfront cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How are you going to cover it? How are you going to cover you might have all the incentives down the road, right?
Yeah.
Your production will increase, soil health and all the rest of it, but there is an upfront cost. And how do you cover that in an industry where the margins are quite tight, right?
Exactly.
The margins are quite tight. There is a role for vertical funds. There is a role for coalitions like the CCAC that's brought us here. There is a role for the private sector. There is a role for repurposing, not just subsidies, but agricultural investments, looking across the breadth of those agricultural investments and see how you get a better bang for the buck.
I mean, you had a lot of organic agriculture at one time in Kenya, East Africa, and there the incentive was that the farmer would get 3 times the price of their pineapple in a European market. But although I shop in biological markets in Belem, where I live, there's less and less people shopping in those because the cost of living crisis means that they're not buying bio food as much because they can't afford it. So that's quite that's a potentially very risky thing for farmers. So the profit can't just simply be based on, oh, I can sell it for a higher price. Because if nobody wants to buy the thing at the higher price, then you're absolutely snookered, right? It's got to be based on this transition is making me independently better off, rather than, you know what I mean? So maybe I'm not explaining this so well, but
maybe what I wanted to say is one of the things we need to look at is we need to look at profits in a different way. Profits not just in terms of money going to the pockets, but also profits in terms of ensuring that you have a better climate system. And that's where the private sector comes in. And you've rightly pointed it out. I mean, as long as there's an upfront kind of way of taking care of the costs, the farmers will always adjust. We have companies in Kenya, as you rightly say, Unilever, we grow a lot of tea, that have actually decided to assist the farmers in terms of planting the trees so that they reduce the costs of energy at the factory level, and the payments in terms of the bonuses are higher. And that makes the farmers grow more trees actually on the farms because the factories can buy that as part of the biomass. They use energy in the factories. we've seen this also in the organic products which are grown. As long as there's an incentive, and she rightly put it very nicely, as long as there's an incentive of a slightly higher pay, but the private sector has to look at it. They are not losing in terms of the margins, but they are gaining in terms of the climate. The mindset had to change at some point so that we are looking at it as all of us having responsibility for the planet. And we avoid this thinking about making money, profits. It's good, but we may have to adjust it a bit. So we tweak it a bit.
What is a profit?
So what is
See
the
it in a
profit?
bigger picture, yeah.
Yeah, that's what is
I think we're going to have to wrap up now because we're well past our 15 minutes. It was a really interesting conversation. We kind of started off with super pollutants, and then we just went more into agriculture, right? But actually, just they're all linked, right? Let's be honest. If you get the agriculture going in a nice way for farmers, that also at the same time it is more sustainable, but also is, maybe it has less inputs and things like that, you're going to naturally cut a lot of the super pollutants anyway, particularly methane, I think. Thank you very much for being with We Don't Have Time TV, and it's been a great pleasure to talk to all three of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If we're going to deal with climate change, we need to deal with methane emissions. And if we need to deal with methane emissions, we need to deal with many sectors, including the waste sector. And here in Brazil, with about 2,000 landfills around the country, there's a lot of methane pouring into the atmosphere. The good news is that some people are doing something about it, and they're with us today. Firstly, if you could tell me who you are and who you represent.
Eu sou Aline Souza da Silva, catadora de materiais recicláveis e sou diretora-presidente da CCAC.
So we're here at CCAC. This is a recycling center with waste pickers. Could you please tell us how many people work here and what are they doing at the moment in this recycling center?
Quantas pessoas trabalham aqui? O que elas estão fazendo nesse momento, nesse centro?
Nós estamos num centro de reciclagem de resíduos que tratam resíduos da coleta seletiva. Nesse galpão aqui, nessa unidade no complexo, nós temos 12 cooperativas que são agregadas à rede CCAC e em torno de 420 catadores que fazem parte, são sócios cooperados dessas cooperativas.
We are in the recycling center from CCAC that serves Brasilia city. We receive basically waste from separate collection of the city. Now we have around 12 groups of waste pickers that working in this area, between 420 people working to separate this separate collection.
At the moment, you're mainly separating and recycling metals and plastics and other materials, but you want to move to become an organic waste separator. Why?
No momento hoje você trabalha mais com os recicláveis, mas quer trabalhar com os orgânicos. Por quê?
Nós catadores realizamos a gravimetria dos resíduos que chegam da destinação da nossa população. Observamos que o percentual de resíduo orgânico que chega por meio da coleta seletiva, ele é bem maior que o volume de resíduo reciclável e que ele tem um impacto de contaminação do reciclável e do rejeito. O reciclável porque perde valor agregado, né, e qualidade, e o rejeito porque vai para o aterro e vai gerar metano. Então, o nosso interesse em trabalhar com resíduo orgânico é para, de fato, cumprir com as nossas políticas ambientais, a política nacional de resíduos, gerar, de fato, dignidade de trabalho para nossos catadoras e catadores, gerando renda, de fato, e a gente conseguir tornar o orgânico reciclável e fazer com que ele a gente torne produto deles como adubo ou gás, biogás, que vai absorver, né, toda a cadeia aí de consumo.
She basically said that when they started working with waste management, they noticed that the largest part of the waste that sometimes comes inadequately in the separate collection but generated in the city in Brazil are organic. So they need to find a solution for that. And when they started looking at these possibilities and understanding all these climate pledges and the environmental goals that Brazil is signing, they should move forward to give a solution for the whole waste management stream and not only the recyclables. So they saw a window of opportunity, mostly to generate jobs for the people that are working here now.
So tell me, Victor, how big a problem is methane emissions in Brazil from the waste stream?
The problem of waste methane in Brazil is big. Like today, waste sector is responsible for the second largest emission source in Brazil. Like 16% of the whole emission sector of waste of methane in Brazil comes from the waste stream, and this comes from landfills.
Now, you're working on a plan to change this dynamic, which could, if it works, be a blueprint for cities across Brazil to recycle organic waste. Briefly, tell me what is the plan and where does this plan stand at the moment?
Totally. We are working with a plan for Brazil, mostly that we understand that all these like broad discussions from UN, climate pledges, and also commitments from Brazil needs to go for the ground level. And the people who are in the ground level are the waste pickers. So basically the plan from Policy Institute is to build the capacity in the waste pickers and also local governments, local communities, so they can put organic waste management in their daily livelihoods. In Brazil, basically, 50 to 60% of the whole recycling rate of the country is from the waste pickers. So they are the solution that we have now for waste management. So building capacity to them so they can step in the organic waste management is the fastest solution we have to improve our organic waste recycling rates and reduce methane emissions in the waste sector.
So here in Brasilia, the idea is to collect waste initially from street fairs, which are quite big and they produce a lot of organic waste. You're going to have a special truck, I think, that will pick them up, these wastes, the organic waste. And this will be the beginning, and then it could go Brasilia-wide, and after that it could go Brazil-wide. This is the fundamental. And you'll bring the waste, organic waste, to Alina's center here, is that right?
Yes, totally. That's totally right.
Alina, you are so articulate on this topic. I don't know, do all waste pickers know how dangerous methane is for the climate, how bad it is for human health? You were so fantastic earlier explaining this, and I admire your understanding of the topic. This is so important because a leader like you can make a difference in the policy as well.
Ele falou que ele te admirou muito, ele quer saber, todos os catadores têm ideia dessa importância do metano, como você vê isso, porque pessoas como você podem ser grandes líderes para mudar esse cenário político e incentivar as pessoas, que é muito importante que tenha gente como você.
Não, nós catadores, nós nos interessamos basicamente em chegar na cooperativa, ter um material seletivo de qualidade para a gente poder reciclar e ter a nossa renda através disso. Mas quando a gente se depara na cooperativa com a grande fração orgânica vindo com título de coleta seletiva, a gente tem que começar a estudar a respeito, tem que buscar alternativas e soluções para a gente conseguir proporcionar e sugerir soluções viáveis e corretas para o Estado, para o poder público. Então, a partir do momento que a COP ela tem essa compreensão do impacto do orgânico na coleta seletiva e ela sugere a inclusão de uma coleta específica do orgânico, os catadores automaticamente vão ter vão ver esse resultado na prática, no dia a dia, eles vão buscar saber por que o orgânico saiu da coleta seletiva. Então, a compreensão ela é automática, diária, a partir da implementação desses projetos que nós apresentamos como sugestão.
She said that basically, no, not always speakers have this comprehension, but the daily lives they have and seeing the organic waste coming as contaminants in the dry recyclables collection, like clicked her mind to think like the solutions. And she do think that by the moment, as they are doing now to put pressure to, we need a separate collection stream for the organic waste management. By the moment the other waste speakers see that when you do this, you take out contaminants from the dry recyclables, this will be a big move.
And the very last question. I understand that you had a special moment with President Lula when he was inaugurated for his second term. And you are from the community of waste pickers, but you had a very special role. How did that feel? What was it? And what does it mean for waste pickers across Brazil that you had this honor?
falou que o que significou para você dar a faixa para o Lula e para todos os catadores do Brasil, uma pessoa que veio de baixo, que tem todo esse trabalho, ter sido levada a esse espaço. O que você sentiu? Como é que foi?
Primeiro, uma oportunidade de poder visibilizar o nosso trabalho, trazer a importância da reciclagem no nosso país, trazer a importância do papel das catadoras, que são a maioria no país, e dos catadores na economia circular, na descarbonização, na geração de trabalho e renda e na garantia da sustentabilidade de um país que é um celeiro, né, da floresta amazônica. Então, que traz vida, que tem um significado de vida. Então, os catadores, mais de 1 milhão no país, terem tido essa representatividade com a nobre, né, decisão do nosso presidente Lula, que é mais que amigo do catador, é um presidente que ele sabe não só da nossa importância, mas que ele valoriza e ele tem esse compromisso com as ações que trabalham contra as emergências climáticas. Ele sabe o papel do catador nessas ações de combate. Então, para mim, foi uma enorme honra poder ter sido escolhido entre os 7 representantes do povo para não só frisar e fortalecer a democracia no nosso país, mas também, de quebra, a gente visibilizar o nosso trabalho.
She basically said that it was an honor for her to be there as one people representative giving the presidential lash to Lula, that always speakers felt represented and felt their work is like valorized. It's important because they are almost 1 million in Brazil, and especially most of them are women. So giving this whole of thought, this opportunity to show, it valorized all the way speaker, but more than just putting them in the ceremony, the public policies and all the support that is now starting to come back for the waste speakers is the most important. So they feel valorized and understanding their role to fight climate change, to reach the environmental targets. This is really important, but also she feels that this was an important moment in restoring and reinforcing the importance of democracy in Brazil, putting the people there.
And actually, the very last question, Victor, you're getting support from the government with this plan, Ministry of Environment, perhaps, I don't know, the Global Methane Hub, which is a global initiative that's arisen from the UN climate change process, and others. Are you close to realizing the funding you need to start really transforming the recycling, the reuse, the separation of organic waste, at least in Brasilia?
I would like to say that we are close, but not, because like what policies do is now we are showing we are in the moment that showing that's possible. We are currently working with like around 30 cities and around the 30 waste speakers cooperative, but Brazil have 5,570 cities that we need to impact. So I guess that we are in the beginning of a very important journey. We have crossed the main barrier, that's showing people that it's possible to have hope to change, that we can fight climate change and make it happen on ground. But now I do believe that we need to rethink our finance structure, our policy structure. So what we incentivize in the waste sector is what Aline do is composting, is separate collection. And currently the majority of the system that works is not influenced like channeling efforts and economic flows to that. But I guess that with all these case studies, the SUSEs, and sharing with the people this hope, we'll be able to do this soon and with more support.
So you hope to do it soon. It would be perfect if it happened before Belem with COP30 in November. So fingers crossed.
Sure, fingers crossed. We hope that until COP30 we can do a lot, and after COP30 do even more.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you for being with We Don't Have Time TV, and well, all the best with your fantastic work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigado. Thank you so much. Very good. Obrigado. Thank you.